This week's episode on Take Flight podcast is based around feedback we received from a listener whom shall remain anonymous. They've been honest and transparent enough to ask how can they save money on a low income salary that is no more than 25k annually. For them, they believe it's easier for someone who's on 40k or more to put away, save or invest, but not the same for those on lower salaries. In this episode, we explore some investment tips and advice that we could share with this individual, what experiences we've had when we're on the lower end of the salary or income earning, whether it be in our full-time role, internship or placement. Knowing what we know now, what would we do differently, and how can this person or anyone in a similar situation increase their earning potential. We share some hot fire gems and tips. This is an episode you don't want to miss because there may be some things you haven't considered and can even adopt now on a higher salary. Stay tuned and let's get started.
Take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
You know, to be honest, one of the things I was thinking about with everything that's happened last year and this year, this is probably the brightest thing that's happened to the country. So it's nice. The longer England are in the tournament, the better for everybody's sort of feeling the morale. So it'll be cool, actually. Let's see.
All I want is a bank holiday. I don't care about anything else.
Oh, boy.
A bank holiday.
Oh, Bloomberg, you hear that?
How's everyone doing?
All good. All good.
All good, thank you. How's everyone? Let's get pumped. Sorry, this is my episode. I'm taking the lead now. How is everyone doing? Welcome, listeners, to episode 87 of Take Flight podcast. So how is everyone? A bit of energy in the room. We're recording this episode on the day England have just beat Germany. A lot of people in this room are very happy, very pumped, very excited. They've got their right to remain in the country. England are on the way to the final.
It's coming home, right?
It's coming home, guys. It's coming home.
When you say right to remain in the country, who's you talking to? Who's you referring to?
I'm just saying.
Any
Right
shot?
to remain.
Oh, okay,
Two of
okay.
you are not even in the country, so I guess he must be referring
I
to
don't
me.
know. I thought you might be talking to you, Olu. That's what I was thinking. It must be
I
people that
wasn't
are in
firing
the
any
UK.
shots. I wasn't firing any shots. I'm just saying. But anyway, that aside, how is everyone? How's everyone's week been so far?
We're good.
Fantastic. Lots of football, lots of great games. So that's pretty much what I've been spending my spare time doing: property and watching football.
So the new role must
Yeah,
be
you had a
treating
few
you well,
late
doesn't it?
nights.
Huh?
Yeah, I think that's the most I've seen you lean back in a while, Olu. So things must be going well.
Hey, life is good. The new role is good. You know, everything's good. Can't complain.
Good to hear. We saw that. I saw that you had a few late nights on Instagram on your stories, setting up the latest property for your latest tenants.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I did an episode, the previous episode, episode 86, which was the Take Flight Takeaways episode, where I was talking about that business, Beckley Rose Property Solutions. So if you haven't listened to it yet,
Hey,
feel free
this
to.
is an episode.
100%.
This is an episode to be plugged in your business. Yeah, cool.
Wait, no, but the thing is, when I
I
saw the title, yeah, I thought, man didn't bring it up versus property versus stocks. Yeah, you just conveniently left it out. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I like I said before,
You did-
businesses are the best way to
Mate,
generate cash flow.
Is it?
The best way for the listeners to estimate Olu's cash flow is determine how far this guy leans back on his chair. If he's leaning back as much as he's leaning back right now, cash flow is booming right now. Daniel, how are you? How's things? Because the haircut is looking fresh.
No, it's actually. I
Yeah.
think you need to trim though. You need to trim. You need to trim.
Nah, it's fresh. This was fresh on Friday.
I swear down.
This is a 4-day-old trim.
Oh, the sides though. I thought you needed a little.
Nah, you can't really talk.
No, I just saying. I could be here.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
you need a bit more. You need a bit more. Hey, big man, I beg you cut off some of Karim's hair and put it on yours. Got a toupee on.
I don't want it. That's
Daniel
my
was
thing.
strapped. Daniel was
You know
strapped.
what I'm
The thing is, what's funny is Pabila was making a general remark and Daniel was locked and loaded to fire back.
No, I think you know what that means. The barber jacked him up. He doesn't like his haircut. That's why he's coming at me. That's why.
The barber
I know.
jacked me up.
Yeah, I can
Cut
tell.
your
There's some.
I think it's my personal experience
Nah.
because he got jacked up and never recovered, big man.
To be fair, I actually jacked myself up, but that's another story. Okay.
Okay. I think okay. Let's put the jokes away and let's get right into the episode. So I thought we would. Oh, this topic is around some feedback we had from a listener. We'll keep them anonymous, but it was really to talk about salary and saving. We've spoken about saving in the past, but we kind of aligned it to us in terms of going forward and from our positions where we are now. But if we take a step back, so to set the scene and to provide some context, this particular individual was curious to know how and if it's possible to save money on a monthly basis if their salary isn't over £25,000 a year, GBP. Let's take, for example, that they're living in London or in or around London. I don't have the specifics, but let's just assume that they're living in London, working in London, and the base is 25k. They believe it's easier for someone who's on 40k, 50k, or 60k above to put away more money and save it on a monthly basis, or to invest it compared to those on a lower salary. So in this episode, I thought we'd discuss, let's take it back to maybe when we're in internship or when we're in our first or early jobs, or if not, putting ourselves into a situation where we're on 25k. How would we approach this situation of trying to save money whilst on a salary of 25k? Let's assume the person's out of university, paying off student loan as well. So of course, a few variables that we can just kind of assume, but let's try and give some practical tips on what we would do to save money on a monthly basis. So how does that sound? Sound good? Did I miss anything out? Everyone understand?
Really
Meaty.
good. Really good
I
topic.
think we're gonna go to P first. The reason I say P, I think P shared his story in the previous episodes about the internship, being at Porsche, how he lived with his 2 jacket potatoes a day, and saving money. So P, firstly, do you think it's possible to save whilst being on a 25k salary, living in London, and of course maybe some minor responsibilities?
It's possible. It's even possible to save on less. It's just that it's more challenging for that individual. What came to mind when I was thinking about this episode, it really, when you say saving, what are you saving for? Right? If it's just to put some money aside, that's pretty easy to do. Because I think we calculated the net take home would be like 1,000 something. So from that, you could actually put something aside. Now, are you saving for a property? Because obviously that would take some time. Are you saving to put money into stocks like Olu spoke about in a previous episode? Or are you just saving just to save? So I think one thing we should explore, we'll probably talk about it, is like, what is the person saving for? I would say before I give it to that, guys, it's possible. It's obviously, it can be challenging. The other thing to keep in mind, it's not about how much you make, it's how much you keep. So this notion of someone that earns 40,000, 50,000 is easier, not necessarily, because that person will just end up adjusting their lifestyle to how much they earn. So, and then I'll just quickly add about the internship. So for me, on my internship, I walked into the self-assessment center just to give some context and background, expecting, because the average pay at that time was £15,000. So I thought, okay, I'm going to save 10 and then maybe spend 2 or 3 throughout that year, and that will do me well. That was my target, to save 10. And on the self-assessment, they said, oh, we're offering 11,200 and something like that. So I had a target to save to start working for property. So I was quite aggressive. So I saved pretty much 100% of that money and then lived on some of the money I had to come in. So it's possible, but then the question comes down to lifestyle, right? So I'll just start off by saying that perhaps I'll pass it to Olu to share some points.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that P said. I think to clarify what P was mentioning is on a gross salary of 25k, the amount that you actually take home after taxes, you're looking at around 1,700 each month. That's how much you'll take home. I think I'm not going to repeat anything that P said. I'm just going to mention that when you're on a lower salary, the key thing is working on your mindset and building good fundamentals, right? Because if you can't manage 25k, you're not going to be able to manage 50k, 100k.
Or
Now,
250, whatever.
or 250. Yes, obviously, if you have more money, you have the ability to save more. That is simple maths, right? You have more money, you have the ability to save more. But if you don't work on that fundamentals at an early stage, and I think every one of us on this call, if we look at our internship first job, the most important thing was working on that fundamental, building good habits, allocating money to savings account, investments, and being intentional. And as long as you do that, no matter what your money amount is, right, you can build that investment, that growth, that saving as your salary starts to increase. But you first need to figure out what that fundamental is, and getting that fundamental right. So I'll pass it to Shuwa. I've got some advice, some more technical advice as we go on and how you invest, etc. But let's stay with the high level first.
Yeah, so to be honest, on this one, very quick on my side, I've got nothing to add from what Pabila and Olu have already said. I think with this particular question, you guys have covered all the bases. I think it's tough. When I was at a stage where I was earning that much, my saving was very, very low. So I'm probably not the best person to give advice on how to save that at that income, because I was just all about the spending. I'll give a couple of tips later on about what I probably would have done a bit different. I think Olu and Pabila covered all the bases. At least on my side. Unless Daniel has anything you want to add.
I just
No, I was go on, P.
I actually wanted to just chime in with an advice, because it's actually what tends to happen is people that earn 25 or 30 or even 35, they feel they're not earning enough money, so they spend it all, and they say to themselves, I'll start saving when I earn more. And that can be a very deadly, dangerous trap, because going back to Olu's point, you're not giving yourself an opportunity to build the basics. So I would actually say, I mean, it depends on, I don't know how old the person is, but whatever you start off with, it's your opportunity to show the universe what you can do with that amount of money. What you do with a lot is what you did with a little. It doesn't change. So I remember some people around me saying, I'm not earning much, so I'm going to spend it. And if we looked at where they are today, it's the exact same cycle, right? So it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of the salary, I think we fixate ourselves on a number. And I often think that when we think of our salary, we quickly think, how or what can I spend this money on? You think, oh, I'm earning 25K, I can buy this. I'm earning 50K, oh, I can buy this. You're not actually thinking about, I can save this, or I can do this. You're thinking about what you can amass, what you can buy, what you can purchase. So I think it's really a shift in the mindset of what you can actually do with the money, about as to how you can spend the money. And I'll give a real life example. In my first job post-uni, I can't remember what the salary was. And then when I moved company, when I left there after 8 months, I got, my salary changed significantly, but my habits didn't. So what I was spending, not recklessly, but I was spending very little saving. And when I got my new job and my salary increased, I was still doing the same. So those habits have to really be ingrained in you. Like Olu was saying, you have to develop those habits. You have to create those fundamentals that you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, have a plan. And then as your salary increases, or as you earn more, you're able to continue to multiply that and continue that over the long haul, rather than just thinking, I'm going to spend this, I'm going to spend that. But I really think it's about understanding not what the figure is, but how you can spend it. And most importantly, not compare yourself to others. Don't compare what you're on now to other people, because your earning potential can actually increase, and you can do things, and maybe we'll touch it towards the end, about increasing that earning potential. Of course, it may have limits depending on what industry you're in and what level you're at, but there is definitely opportunity for you to increase your earning potential, so that that amount can increase and your saving amount can increase as well.
So two things. One, I thought it was quite interesting how Olu started creeping forward when you was talking about your spending habits. Olu was thinking, am I learning something new about my boy?
No, I wanted to understand what some of these reckless spending habits were.
I didn't say it was reckless. I said I was spending. I didn't say it was reckless. So like, if you're going out to eat, you're not really thinking about the cost. You just go out, you just spend money at a restaurant. You go out to eat maybe more times than if you had budgeted. You should permit it. Yeah. Let's leave it there.
Let's leave it there.
Daniel, I think you mentioned a great point, because you spoke about, just because you're earning what you're earning today doesn't mean you can't earn 10 times as much in the near future. I would, based on what I was earning in my internship, I could never dream of what I'm earning now. I wouldn't be able to fathom it, because that for me would have been like, oh, well, I'm only going to be incrementally better than this. Right. So I think that's a great lesson, actually. People shouldn't necessarily be stuck on that number and feel this is basically my reference point, right?
For sure. And I think, Daniel, you also mentioned around not comparing to other people. I think that's also on that element of mindset. And I think when you're on a lower salary, 25K, you need to have a mindset of understanding what you can afford. And I just think it's good to mention this, right? Because we're now in a generation where there's a lot of social media. We see what a lot of people are doing, flaunting, showing. If you truly want to change your life, especially when you're starting off or you're on 25K, you have to sacrifice and do what a lot of people are not willing to do. And the reason why a lot of people are not willing to do that is because they're so focused on the immediate gratification. And you need to be able to say no. You're going to have to say, look, there might be a lad's holiday, or you with your girls, you're going away somewhere. And you might have to say, no, this doesn't meet my goals this year or next year. And maybe after I focus on 1, 2, 3, then I can have that gratification. Or, hey, I see this nice piece of trainers. No, this is going to break my budget. I'm not going to buy this right now because I've got a bigger goal. Or you might say, hey, I'm going to bring in lunch every single day to the office versus going out and doing lunch. You need to be able to say no, but with a focus on your bigger goal, right? And that's just one thing I want to also mention, that mindset. Also, if you could get around friends who understand what your goals are and support you, right? Because thankfully, I've had friends where we're not trying to live the flashy lifestyle. It's not like every Saturday I'm getting, yo, let's go and get a table here, there. If I did have that group of friends, I'd probably be trying to keep up with them, and I wouldn't be able to achieve what I've been able to achieve because I'll be just blowing my money all the time. So, yeah.
Can I just say, before we continue, thank God all 4 of us learned how to save. Like, we don't talk about it enough. We always talk about where we're moving our money, right? But Olu, you mentioned the point about that building that habit from the beginning. Like, I think if any one of us didn't necessarily build that habit, I don't think it will be a 4. I think it'll be a 3, honestly, because it starts to build an association. So
if it was a 3, we wouldn't be here, P.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I'm speaking.
And P,
I'm speaking.
You don't know what I'm saving. You don't know what my bank statement says. I could be in a lot of debt. I could be crying out right.
No, I know your numbers. I know your numbers.
But you're leaning back on it. You're good.
I think it's about that association. It's about who, like you said, who you're surrounding yourself with. So, so yeah. Daniel, go ahead.
I think we've been talking. We shared a bit of advice and some general tips, etc. But let's go down to practical tips. So let's assume you're taking home $1,700 a month.
Let's do it.
And let's call it $1,500, just in case there's any deductions from student finance or anything else. So let's just assume $1,500K a month.
No, you're squeezing, big man. You're squeezing, man. Just do 1.7. Do 1.7.
Yeah, just do 1.7 because that's the number I did.
Okay, you're squeezing, man. I've already been chopping. So come on, don't squeeze.
You're taking one. No, I'm saying 1,500 because let's assume 200 a month for travel.
Yeah, but
but that's part of my allocation.
Okay, sorry. Okay, cool.
Man, come on, man.
Okay, Olu,
go on.
Olu, the numbers, man.
Okay.
Run it.
So we've got 1,700. First advice.
What would you do?
First advice that I have for for the listeners, and I'll do for myself, is understand your high debt level, and that is the number one thing you should be trying to pay down before you even start saving or investing. You should be focused on paying down any high debt. And what I mean about high debt, that's anything greater than sort of 10%. So, 5-10%. Yeah, go on.
You mean consumer debt, though? You're referring to like credit card debt?
Consumer debt.
Yeah,
and it could be like for a car, high interest. So high interest debt. Now, the reason why I tell people to do that is because even if you're trying to invest.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we need to put a disclaimer. But yeah, so the first thing you need to do is pay off any high interest debt. And the reason why that is if you're expecting a 10%, let's just imagine you invest and you get 10% return. That's nothing if you're ending up paying off debt, which is 20-30%. So before you even start saving, that is what I would advise anyone. If you have high debt, you should pay that off. Now, if you're getting 1,700 in, The
Olu,
first
Olu,
thing, yeah, go on.
Are you saying what you're going to do or what you're advising? Because I'm going to say what I would do.
What I did, so I don't have a high debt, but what I did when I was
Okay.
working my way up, the first vehicle of investment that I decided to put into was pension. And the reason why, so for the listeners that we have, if you work for a company that has any sort of matching or matching contribution scheme, that is the best way for you to start truly investing. So if I think about a 25k salary with a 5% contribution, that's me contributing around 1,250 over a year. If I think about my company, so my company currently, they put an additional 9% on top of that. That's then put in roughly around 2,250. So in a whole year, just by you putting that 5% in, you're saving around 3,500 on an annual basis. Now, if I over like 10 years, 10% increase, now you've got a pot of around 50 to 60k. So just by you putting 5% on your salary, and that's not taking into consideration your salary increasing over that period of time, but that's 10 years on a 10% increase year over year, you're looking at around 60k that you've already been able to save. So that's my first advice. Now, the second advice I have in regards to the rest of the money. So now by reducing that, I'm looking at roughly around 1,700 because you get tax benefits by putting into your pension, etc. What I would advise you to do now is look at your accommodation. Do you have the opportunity to stay at home? Now, a lot of people leave home quite early, and you're going to start to have a high rental fee that you have to pay. So if you are able to stay at home, that would be one advice. If you're not, you should look for a room share option. So London, close to London, you're looking around 500, 550. You can find in areas like Slough, etc. The next thing that I would advise the person to do
Slough.
is,
You're assuming they're working in West London. How about they're working in East?
even if they're working in East, you can commute trains. Even if anywhere that has a train station, your journey will be longer. But again, these are sacrifices that you have to make. The next advice I would say is, I would try to save up around £500 a month towards this. Has got two purposes. One is an emergency saving, but also I'm using that to save for property. So on a 25k salary, the bank will loan you approximately around 5 times. So you're looking at around 125k you can get. Prior to this, us recording, I checked some locations. You can find properties in Luton, 1-2 bedroom houses for, you're looking at around 150, 160k. So that means that £500 that you're putting aside each month, it'll take you probably around 4 years to save enough to be able to purchase a property. The reason why this is so important is a lot of people's wealth is in the homes that they own, equity growth. So a lot of us deal in property and we have multiple properties, but for the average person, the most of their growth in wealth is through the property in which they own. So trying to save £500 towards that, then you're looking at around 250 towards travel, and then you're looking at 100 towards bills. And then when I was looking online, what the food amount, you're looking around £200 a month. Now, with that £200 a month, you've obviously got to put some sacrifice in terms of taking lunch in, not going to holidays, trips, etc. That is how I would manage the 250. Obviously, we're going to talk later on in the episode about how we can increase that 25k. But I guess my key advice would be pay off high debt. Second, if you have any work pension contribution, start doing that early, maximum amount. You get tax benefits and you get additional money from your employer. And then the third thing is, if you can stay at home, reduce your spending, try to allocate £500 a month towards saving for a property where in 4 or 5 years, you'll be able to find your first property or buy your first property.
Love it.
That was not financial advice. That was solely Olu's opinion. So please
yes,
take that.
no advice.
Do your own research. Sure,
how
would you
play?
Over to you.
Yeah, I don't mind going next.
Play that.
Yeah, because I think it would probably be contrasting a bit to Olu because I didn't break it down into that much detail. So
Guess what? You didn't have a choice. You're going next anyway. Go.
Okay. So in terms of directionally, so what would I do? So I think one thing similar to Olu is the first thing that I would do is really understand in terms of a budgeting perspective how much is coming in. So I think that's a fixed amount, assuming it's just your salary, but really start to calculate how much is going out. So on average, how much am I spending on certain things in terms of living, the food costs, experiences, all of that stuff, and just get a budget in mind, because I think before you can start to set targets, it's good to know where you are today. So once you've got an idea where you are today, I personally didn't go into investing straight away when I was earning that much, because I didn't really know what to invest in. And to be honest, I think for people starting out, what you should be investing in and what you want to invest in, I think it can be different per individual. So what I would actually suggest is to put aside a certain amount of money every month. I think 500 is actually a good place to start at that level. And then I think once you're putting that money aside, I'll start to think about where you could spend that money investing it in yourself and your own skill set. Because I think at that stage, you could allocate it to your pension, you could allocate it to stocks, you could allocate it to property. But then if you have that money saved up and you start to invest in a particular training or understand a skill set in an area that you're super interested in or curious about, then even if in the short term you may not be getting an investment per se, from that skills and the training that you can invest in for yourself, that may actually have a better payout later on. So I would actually recommend getting that budget in place, getting a set percentage amount that you want to put aside per month. So start with £500. And then while you're putting that money aside every month, start to think about areas that you're curious about and areas that you would be interested in investing in, to then use that money that you've put aside every month to invest in a training or some type of course to develop the skill sets to really do it at a better level. Because you could end up saving 10K, 20K, 30K, putting that towards a training that you're very interested in, a training that's reputable. And then from that, you could learn something that could pay you hundreds of thousands or millions across a lifetime, or at least in the next 10-year horizon. So I think at that stage, that's what I would recommend. Anything that you have left over. Personally, I have the approach that I like to spend on experiences. So anything else beyond that, if you get the opportunity to travel, if you get the opportunity to network and meet people, to pay to go to some events, I probably spend it on developing that. Because probably in that first year with 25K, it'll be difficult to invest in something that gets you a big substantial payout, apart from investing in yourself. Or of course, if you're looking at pensions and this type of stuff that Ollie mentioned, they're also great examples as well to start the foundation. But just to contrast Olu, that's probably what I would do from my perspective at that point.
Yeah, I think it's some great advice that you guys are giving. And I think some of the things I was going to say, I think it combines with a little bit of both what you guys are saying. So if I was on £25,000 now, I would sit down and hash out a few facts. One fact is, I know it's not enough to basically make investments that are going to create a certain level of increment. So I need to figure out a way to increase to £25,000. What I would do that at that point, to Shua's point, is I would focus on investing in myself. So I'd look at saving over time, and then before going into sort of an investment play, try to basically do the self-education path, knowing what I know now. But on practical terms, if I had £1,700 a month, this is what I'll do. I'd commit to saving £1,000 a month. Very aggressive target. The reason being is it's harder to save more than it is to save less. So I'd start on £1,000 a month, then I've got £700 left over. I would work to commit to staying at home. Then I've basically just got to focus on travel and also on then food. And I think I've got like £200, £300 left over. So I'd really try to do it aggressively, because then, to Olu's point, if I was going for a property, perhaps I'm there in 2 years. So that's my thinking on how I'd play it, like a 60% saving ratio. But the way I'm looking at it is like a 2-year program where I'm really saving aggressively, and it's very clear on what the vision is. And what I'll be trying to do is put some of that money into self-education, plus then invest in a property. I think you have to live at home. I think with that kind of money, and I think you have to make sacrifices for a short period of time.
Thank you.
The other thing was the other thing was the other thing I'm going to say actually to keep in mind, it sounds very aggressive when Shuo, Daniel, myself say, save 500 or save 1,000. What you'll find actually, if you start doing it, you normalize it, and then it becomes after month 4, month 5, you stop thinking and you just automatically put 1,000 aside. And then when you look up and you've got 12,000 after 1 year, when all your peers who are earning more don't have that. And I've seen that firsthand. right? So it's that's the kind of path I will take.
Thanks. I think two things you said that stand out to me is you look to increase that 25k annually.
Yep.
And also you, by saving more, that £1,000, you foster that habit so that when your earning power does increase, the 1,000 will be the base, and you might even increase that to maybe 1,500 or 2,000
Exactly.
a month, which is key. Not to dwell on or to reiterate too much of what the three of you said, but that £700 is essentially, you have to make sure your outflows are less than your inflow. So if you're receiving 1,700, however you're spending that money, however you split it, however you dice it, it has to be less than that 1,700. And I think from coming from a different angle, maybe put a budget together if you haven't got one already, and maybe go through, a monthly statement and see what's in the out column. What are you spending your money on that you can cut back, what you can now put into savings, or you can put into investment if your level of savings is at a healthy number. And things you can easily look at to eliminate and eclipse could be things like subscriptions. So if you've got a Netflix account, if you've got Amazon Prime, if you've got Spotify, if you've got Apple Music, all of these subscriptions add up. If you've got a gym membership that's kind of on the top end, or a premium membership when you can go to maybe a cheaper gym, it hasn't got to be a David Lloyd that Olu goes to, where it's got the whole spa, the sauna, the tennis courts, the squash courts.
But Daniel, that chest that Olu's got doesn't come for free, big man. It costs money.
Of course, but he's worked at that over time. You go to like the gym group, or Pure Gym, something cheaper that that you can afford. But I think it's really scrutinize your spending, and maybe it is that you have done that already. So if you have done that, you've got to a level where you've cut everything out that you possibly can. Maybe it is time to, maybe if you're not living at home, live at home. But to be honest, it will be uncomfortable. I think we've all gone through experiences where we've had to save aggressively. Maybe that we've been on a different salary, but we still had to work aggressively to save towards something. And I certainly have, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't get a trim for over 8 months. I taken packed lunch into work, but I knew what the end goal was, which spurred me on to give me the fuel to keep on going. And to be honest, it all has an expiration date. It's not forever. And that's the thing that fueled me is, here's the reward at the end. It's only for a period of time. And even during that period, I learn a lot more about myself and know that I'm able and capable to do things that I previously maybe thought I couldn't do. So
Daniel,
Daniel, you can't emphasize that point anymore. It's going to be tough. I don't think anyone on this call is saying it's easy. Even on our higher salary right now, because of our goals and our aspiration, it is tough right now.
I can tell you start adding kids to that.
It's tough. There's so much easy. Easy is not going to get you to where you need to be, right? And if depending on what your growth, what your aim is, right? I think all of us right now could probably say, you know what, we're gonna sit down, chill, and just have a basic lifestyle and be okay, right? But because of what we're trying to build and achieve, it's going to be tough. There's sacrifices. Like someone my salary could probably live a more lavish lifestyle.
Lavish.
Not probably, 100%. I know 100%.
100% can live a more lavish lifestyle, but I choose not to because I want to allocate that money to greater and bigger goals so that I can delay that immediate gratification. That is the key thing. Delay it because it's going to be worth it. The worst thing you could be is 40, 50, and look back and say, I haven't saved, I haven't invested, I'm still having to work super hard, I don't have any money, just because you decided to just follow the Joneses. Honestly, it's going to be tough for the listener on 25K, 20, whatever. It's going to be tough, but it will get easier if you're willing to sacrifice now and reap those rewards, plant those seeds now so you can reap those rewards in the future.
Totally agree, Olu. I just wanted to add one quick thing actually about the psychology around saving. It came to me as I gave the mic to you, Daniel. The reason why I went with the proposal of saving £1,000 from 1.7 is because it shocks your way of thinking and working to the point where now your standard is £1,000 a month, and you start thinking twice about lowering it. On the flip side, if you're making 1,700, it's very plausible to make a case to say, I can only afford to save £300. And everybody would be like, I totally agree with you. What happens there is you don't feel after a period of time like it's even worth it. And what I've seen is people then start to say it's no point. Let me just start spending. Right. So it's interesting on what happens on either end of the spectrum, depending on which side, how you determine to play it. So I would suggest, really push it to begin with. Give it 6 months and see.
Okay, cool. Now let's flip it. Now let's think about, okay, 25K. How can I now increase my earning potential? Increase my earning power. What can I do? Let's not assume any particular field or industry, but what things do you think we could, just suggest and throw out? Because there could be a number of listeners in a variety of different fields and industries that some of these may be applicable to, or more than the other. So, what would you suggest? Sherelle, over to you first.
Yeah, I'll kick it off then, Daniel. So I think it's a great question. So there's probably 3 things that I would do to try and increase my earning potential. And these are things that, to be honest, I think they never stop in your career. If you're trying to be a high performing person, you're trying to build things, you're trying to do things together with people. These are things that probably will continue to keep happening. So one is really invest in my skills. So what can I invest in? Skills that are useful. So that can be negotiation, that could be learning about a certain type of investment, it could be public speaking, it could be anything, but skills that really continue to provide value to yourself, so then you could help provide value to others. So that's one thing that I would definitely do. The other piece is I would actually really invest in the network. So if we give an example on property that we've spoken about in multiple episodes now, that really took a step change once I invested in programs where I could meet the people who knew information that I didn't know. So if I could have done that earlier, then I think that acceleration would have happened a lot earlier as well. So that's something that I would also invest in these relationships, go to these types of events. A lot of these are free actually. Now in a virtual environment, you can also join free. I'd really invest in that network. So skills and network. The final one that I would say is I would actually see the fact that if you perceive 25K as being at the beginning of your career, you're actually in the benefit of starting on a low base. So starting on a low base means that you've got nothing to lose. It's as if you're starting from zero, quote unquote. So whatever decision you make will be a big decision, and you actually don't have the limitations of a family. You don't have the limitations of financial commitments. So at this stage, you can actually make bigger bets. That could mean relocating to another country, which is what I did for an internship. That could be jumping into an industry that that's really high growth. That could be jumping on a plane and going to a country or a particular part of a country where that there's lots of growth coming. So I would actually see the fact that even though you may perceive that as a low amount, it actually gives you a lot of flexibility because you really don't have that much to lose. And I would really lean on that, because that's something that probably 10 years from now, if things go as you're trying to achieve, you may not have that flexibility and you may not be able to make as big of a bold move. So those are the 3: skills, invest in network, and then also leverage the fact that you're starting on a low base and do something that's drastic and that could have a big payout.
Thanks, Rob. I'm just going to add the spin to this question, actually. Some great points you raised there. And I say I'm going to add this because you started talking about things outside of work. So I'm going to kind of split into two. So Pete, I'm going to ask you to go next and focus that you are in your job. You're not thinking about any side hustles, anything, any ventures outside of work. What could you do practically in your current role to increase your earning potential? And then Ollie will come to you about things outside of work as well. Then I maybe just close with some things that you could do inside of work as well. So Pete, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Because actually, that's the line I was thinking about. If I'm sitting at work and I'm earning £25,000, my best next move is to focus within my current space. So the very first thing I'll have to do is get a very, 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 very clear understanding on what the roles are in the corporation and what people are earning. Now, I may not be able to understand within the company, but I can check on LinkedIn and do some research. So I'll spend quite a bit of time doing research on what's out there. I need to know what the target is before I can actually start taking the steps to get there. So that's the first thing. Then after that, I would then, to Shual's point, understand what the skills are required to get into those roles, because that then is going to form part of my plan and what I then start to work on. So that'll be the second thing, get clear on the skills. And then the third thing is work with some co-workers or peers to develop a plan on how I can start working on these skills, right? Who here can help me to develop my public speaking skills? Do I need to learn? Okay, has anyone got suggestions about how I can actually improve my spreadsheet skills? Let me start working on some of these things. And I think that third piece is the hardest piece, because that's where you then develop a plan and commit to the plan and then work that plan very hard. So it's almost like on top of your job, you're also doing, it's like a development plan you set for yourself, right? And I think in doing that over a period of time, but there's something else you have to add to that. Otherwise you won't be able to move. So that's very important, working on the plan. The second thing to add to that is you have to market yourself within the corporation. You've got to let people know where you currently are, and also where you're trying to get. Actually, no, where you're trying to go. You have to let them know where you're trying to go, what your career aspirations are, because people don't forget this. People keep it in mind, and people actually keep it in mind when there's positions that are opening up. And we found that in our experiences that a lot of times it's not a case of submitting your CV to get the next role in the company. People have tapped on your shoulder. Are you interested? I've got something opening up. So the plan is one side, but you have to marry that plan with a marketing play at work, and get people to know who you are. Otherwise, you'd be that guy who's earning £25,000 sitting in the corner, very humble, nice, a nice person, but only your team knows who you are. That's not going to work. Or female, sorry.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, B. Some very poignant points.
Great
Olu,
points.
what would you got to say?
So, and this is focusing on outside of work, right?
Maybe, yeah, just maybe thinking outside of the box. So, yeah, conversely to
Okay.
what P was mentioning, think about more maybe ventures outside of work that you could do to
Perfect.
increase.
Cool.
Yeah.
The first thing that I would do in terms of, and we've talked about a little, is owning assets. So what I mean about that is whatever you're saving or you've got to look at investing it as soon as possible. And that's the reason why I said put it in a pension pot, because already you're increasing your wealth. Like I've generated, I would say, more money than what I've saved through buying property, owning equity, than what my salary has brought in. The second advice I would have for the listener is really first understand how much time you have in a day that is wasted. The reason why this is important, because by understanding how much time you're wasting on watching Netflix, just chilling, relaxing, etc., you'll be surprised at what you're able to build. And what I mean is you can either build stuff that might be lower skill sets, so to generate cash. That could be, hey, you know what, I'm going to be an Uber driver. If the person does drive, in my spare time, I'm going to be an Uber driver to get more money. Me personally, what I would advise is starting some sort of business. Now, with starting this business, you probably, like Shual and Pipilo mentioned, you'll probably need to have some sort of training and knowledge that you gain in whichever area you're planning to start a business. Or you can potentially look at whatever skill sets you've generated through work and say, okay, can I be a contractor or contract that out outside so I can generate more cash flow? But I think what you need to do is, I think that the time of just having one job and that's it is really pretty much died. Like you can't be even middle class and just have your 9 to 5 job. You need to either buy assets which over time increase, right, value, or start a business where you're able to generate additional salary cash flow. So myself, what I've started was a property business, right? And that started with approximately around 4K. So if you're aggressive and you're putting in as much as Pabilo said, saving 1,000, it'll take you 4 months to save up the money you need to be able to purchase or renovate your first property from a landlord. And that could give you an additional 500, 600 pounds a month through that. So there's multiple businesses you can do. A drop shipping business is another idea. There's so many ideas out there, which I would advise the listeners to play around with, explore, right? Because I can tell you about my first business idea that I started at university, right? Everything uni, didn't plan out, wasn't successful, right? I could tell you about my second idea, didn't plan out, wasn't successful. Now my third idea, it's going well so far. We'll see how it continues, but you gotta just continue. You gotta continue.
That's an understatement. That's an understatement. Check out the previous episode. Six Figure Olu is his new nickname.
You just gotta continue grafting, right? And one thing I love the game of just hustling and just trying to generate and figure out. And we live in a time where there's so much resources that could be through people, friends, or it could be through the internet. So I would say, just hustle, graft.
Thank you. Some good points, and I'll wrap up this part up as well. Try not to reiterate what's been said, but first thing, like P said, find out the market rate. And I guess I'm reiterating what he said, but find out, are you being paid in line with this, your peers in the same industry? I think something that's key before you even take any role, and even if the role you're in, is find out how often is compensation reviewed. You could be going into a role where your base will never change. Your base will never change. And to be honest, base or bonus is always best for the base to increase, because bonus is just a one-up payment, cheaper for the company. But as your base increases, that's a lot more. That's a lot more beneficial for you as an individual. Consider your performance. Are you maybe not being a high performer? Are you just kind of there lackadaisy, just in the corner? Your team knows you, but you're not getting that exposure around the organization or beyond your team or beyond your department. Look for big projects that you can, potentially, take on, increase your exposure. Have a candid conversation with your line manager or your department manager about how you can do more, bring more value to the company, and similarly, what skills you can learn and develop to make yourself more attractive and more commercially valuable for the company and maybe other industries. And I guess also, like Sherelle was mentioning about maybe even moving abroad or taking, a risk. Consider moving to a different industry, or an industry where you can get paid a lot more, but not be afraid to step out what you are well accustomed to. So taking that leap of faith, and we've done an episode in the past on, taking a leap of faith. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to take that leap into the unknown and never look back. So those are what I would just say, and what my recommendations would be.
P and Daniel, you guys mentioned 2 points, but I think it's also good to mention to the listeners is, when do you start to research like what the maximum salary or growth can be in where you're maybe at university, when you're selecting a path or course? Is that when you'll start, or will it be when you enter the course, or when you enter your job, working place, career? When is the best time to start looking?
When's the best time to look at what salary expectations?
Salary expectation, lifestyle
What
expectation, because maybe it's just me, right? I saw a lot of people go to university and just pick random courses, right? Where I was like, what is the game plan, right? And it didn't feel like there was any thought process to what is the expectation, right? Because in my mind, the way I think about it is, we all have choices, and we just have to live with our choices, right? So if you want to go into a particular career or path, and that's what you're passionate about, but that is a low paying salary, that's fine, right? But at least you know what you're getting involved in, and the expectations and the struggles. Versus some people that finished, I think, and graduated and said, okay, I'm going to go into this particular field, and found out that the base salary was 20K, and was like, how did and it's like, it's always been 20K for the last 20 years.
Okay, but in that case, I think some people still go back and further their education. So I think, okay, this isn't a high-paying entry-level role. Let me add some more value to myself, to my CV, to get more skills, to go in at a higher bracket. But like you said, some people are happy with that, which is more than fine. But I don't really necessarily think, unless you're going into a specialized field post, university, whether it's dentistry, medicine, law, or anything like that, I don't think your degree matters that much. I think in most jobs these days, they don't really ask for specific requirements in terms of what you study at university. They will ask for a standard kind of 2-1 degree in maybe certain field, or certain, in a certain discipline, but it's not always very specific. I've got people at work in a very dominated financial market industry who studied French at university, who studied English, who studied science, but it's very not related to the role, but they've decided to learn more about, the financial markets, upskill their learning, learn on the job, do additional reading outside of work to ensure that they can be successful in their role. P, what would you say?
Yeah, it depends on your motivations. I think. I mean, me personally. I try to find out as soon as it becomes something that I become aware of, I start researching straight away. Like the earlier the better, right? Because it can have somewhat of a factor on how I decide. And salary was one of them. When I was at university, I targeted the investment banks because of the prestige and how much they're earning. And then I went a different direction. But it was a lot to do with these guys are paying the most. So if I get started with these guys, then I'll basically have a good opportunity to create wealth. That was just my thinking, right? So I think it depends on your motivations. But to Daniel's point, I also know people like my mum's friends who studied chemistry, started working in the field, and said this doesn't pay, and then he stepped out and became an accountant. Right, so he went a long distance before he then said, "Nah, it doesn't pay." Right, so I think ultimately it comes to your point, Olu, choices. It comes down to where does your motivations lie. And maybe on one episode we can talk a little bit about, the money is not, for some people, 25. They're earning 25,000. Actually, they don't want to earn that much more, right? So, but I think ultimately when you draw a line across, red line across everything we discussed today, I think one of the things that, looking back now, one thing I would have done differently, no matter how much I was being paid, is I would have doubled down on all of the skills. And I'd have gone so hard on just building skills and becoming valuable, because ultimately that's what gets noticed and that's what gets actually remunerated over the long run, right? So just focus on building that skill set.
Cool. Thank you, P. Just a quick round robin. Anyone got any final words, advice, or tips for this listener? I think we shared quite a lot, probably a lot to digest. But if there's anything, one line that anyone wants to add at all.
Yeah, we can all just go around and just all go around and just say one takeaway point. P.
It's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep, and where you start doesn't determine where you're going to end.
Yeah, I'll go next. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be worth it. So sacrifice now and reap the rewards in the future.
So from my side, I would say there are lots of things out there with good ROI, Ahmed Capital Group being one of them. But probably the thing that has the best ROI is any money that you invest in yourself, whether that's experience, skills, and relationships. So I would say whatever your level of income, whatever level you're saving, always ensure that you've allocated a certain amount of money investing in yourself and your skill sets, because that will pay a lifetime if you do it well.
I would say just create those habits now. Good habits are hard to form, easy to live with. Bad habits are easy to form, hard to live with. I'm back with my quotes, baby.
Wait, welcome back, Daniel. Welcome back.
We've missed you.
No, but thank you all for sharing. To the listener who emailed us, I hope you found this useful, and for everyone else, if there is anyone else, I hope you've also found it useful. As always, if there is any feedback for us, you can email us at takeflightpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at takeflightpodcast. With that, we'll say goodbye. We'll see you next week for Take Flight Takeaways. Stay well, stay safe. God bless.
Peace.
Take off.